Hey, this is Sky. Welcome to my YouTube channel. So let's talk a little bit about growing up. I'm not talking to kids here, I'm talking to adults. I'm 49 years old and I'm constantly learning how to be a man, how to be an adult, how to grow up. One of the ways that we grow up, that we stop becoming children in our minds, is how we look at the relationship that we had with our parents. And there's two aspects to it. One is getting over the idea that they were heroes. The other is forgiveness. So let's start with the first one. There's a lot of nostalgia and fantasy that people carry with them from their childhood about their family, about their parents, about their mother and their father. It's fine to look up to your parents as heroes and to see them as smarter, better, more capable than you are, to kind of put them on a pedestal. That's what a lot of children do, not all. I certainly did not do that, and we'll talk about the other side of forgiveness in a minute, but a lot, I say the vast majority of people that I meet and talk to when we talk about how they grew up in their family, they really have this kind of fantasy image of the way their parents were. Not really taking into the account their flaws, not really taking into the account that when your parents had you, they were just a couple of young people making their way in this world. They're no different than you are when you became their age. So my parents had me when they were in their 20s. My dad was 26, my mother was 20. I know what it's like to be that age. I remember, I'm 49 now, I remember how stupid I was. And sure, if I had a 4-year-old child, they might look at me as a 25-year-old man and say, wow, you're so strong and you're so smart and you're this and that. You have to grow out of that. And I'm not saying that you have to begin putting your family down. I'm not talking about going from an idea of loving the wonderful father you had to not loving him. That's not what I'm talking about at all. But you can't put them on a pedestal. In order to be an adult, a fully functioning adult, and to have successful relationships with others, healthy relationships with others, you have to get over this fantasy. You have to stop thinking of your parents as superheroes. You have to realize that they were just people. They're just people who had a kid, who had you. And they did the best they could. You can be thankful for the values that you were taught, if you were taught any. You can be thankful for the food on the table and the roof over your head. Those are things that parents are supposed to do. It gets a little bit annoying sometimes and weird sometimes when you hear adults, fully grown people who should be thinking on their own, should be individuals, and should be building character by themselves. You don't inherit character. You earn it. You learn it on your own. It gets to be weird when you hear them put their fathers or mothers on these pedestals, like they're superheroes, like they're members of the X-Men or the Super Friends or Justice League or something like that. It's weird. It's a sign of immaturity in childhood, and people like that have a hard time in relationships because they are always trying to make others live up to this false image of what they think their parents were. This is what my dad was like, so this is what you should be like. No, that's what you thought your dad was like when you were 5 or when you were 10. So it's important to grow up. It's important to move on from our childhood fantasies. It's important to mature and to realize that our parents were just people. That's all they were. They were just people. Nothing more. They were just a couple of people that had kids. They weren't special. They weren't amazing. They were just who they were. Flaws and good things both, just like all of us. Many people really beat themselves up because they don't feel like they're living up to the way their parents were. You may have surpassed where your parents were, and you're just seeing through this clouded filter of what you think this fantasy of what you think your family was. So then the other side of growing up as an adult and maturing and being in mature relationships that are healthy is to forgive our parents. Many of us, myself included, had very dysfunctional parents. I never was in the camp of this nostalgia or fantasy of my father and mother being great. My father was horribly dysfunctional. Drug addict, alcoholic, gang member, violently abusive, a murderer. He'd killed people. My dad's killed many people. I'm not snitching him out. He's been long dead. He got killed. When you live by the sword, you die by the sword. My dad beat my mother almost every day. I watched it as a kid. My mother was horribly neurotic and crazy, horribly narcissistic, to the point of almost being insane. She was suicidal. She was a stripper. She was not a role model for a woman or a mother. She was horribly ineffective, never there for me. I literally spent the entire time from 10 years old all the way through graduating high school on my own. There was no rules, there was no bedtime, there was no dinner being made or breakfast being made. There was nothing like that in my life. I was on my own, 100% on my own as a child. So I could go on and on and on and bitch and complain, poor me, playing this little tiny violin, shedding little crocodile tears about my life, how fucked up it was. And you can be like, oh, that's so horrible. You're such a good person for overcoming it. No, it has nothing to do with any of it. It's not what I'm talking about. It's not the point of why I'm telling you this. As adults, you have to be able to forgive your parents. Forgive your mother for being weak. I was able to. Lots of women are weak when it comes to raising kids on their own. Sure, every once in a while you get one of these Obama types who was raised on his own and he became president. I grew up in the streets. The vast majority, 9 out of 10 motherfuckers, had no parents, had a one parent, usually just the mother. And they grew up criminals, they grew up drug addicts, they grew up horribly dysfunctional, not able to have successful relationships, all kinds of problems. And this is because they have a single parent. You have to forgive your mother for being weak. It's not her fault. It's the way that she was. It's the way that a lot of women are when they're left on their own to raise a child on their own and they have to work 2 jobs, 3 jobs, struggle and all that. It's hard, especially if you're a man. It's hard for a woman to raise a little boy successfully on her own when she has to do everything on her own. This is one of the important things of having a 2-parent family. You're not just playing babysitter. It's not that just you need 2 people to be babysitters so one can have a rest once in a while. It's not what it is. It's important to have the 2-parent family so they both can raise the child with character and raise the child right and teach that child things. If you didn't have that, maybe you grew up with abuse. My father was abusive towards everybody that he was around, beat everybody. His way to solve things was through physical violence. He's going to break your jaw. He's going to give you a black eye. That's the way he gets through to you. You have to learn to forgive your father. Forgive him for being a douchebag. Forgive him for being a drunk. Forgive him for being stupid. This is the way so many men are. Your parents aren't superheroes. Many times they're flawed. Mine were incredibly flawed. And instead of going my entire life blaming my own failures, my own lack of success on my parents. Oh, I can't ever be this. I don't know this. I don't know that. It's because my parents were this way. I'm horribly dysfunctional in relationships because my father was. It's all a cop-out. That's bullshit you tell yourself. You have to get over that. And one of the ways you do is by forgiving your parents for their flaws and recognizing that they were just people. That's all they were. They were just people. They were just 2 people that got together. Your dad knocked your mom up and they had you. People have all kinds of problems. And in order to move on and to grow up as adults, and I don't care if you went, I know people that have gone through sexual abuse, there's all kinds of forms of abuse. The way to set yourself free is through forgiveness. You don't forgive in order to give a gift to somebody else. There, I release you from from my anger. That's not what forgiveness is about. That's not why you forgive. Do not forgive to simply set someone free, because it has nothing to do with them. Forgiveness is purely for yourself and only for yourself, to set yourself free, to get over this past of, whether it be on the one hand a fantasy of nostalgia and this dreaminess of how wonderful my parents were. Or on the other side, like some of us are, where we have kind of figured I came from shit, so I go to shit. I was raised this way as a piece of crap, so that's why I'm a piece of crap. You'll always be a piece of shit until you can figure out a way to forgive. Even the most abusive, dysfunctional, fucked up, horrible parents, you have to forgive your mother and your father. Forgive them. That doesn't mean you forget. It doesn't mean that you all go from, oh, well, I was abused every day of my life and I have the scars to prove it, to now I say, well, I guess I love that abuse. That's not what I'm talking about. That's not at all what I'm talking about. That's not what forgiveness is about. Have you been ever able to forgive somebody who wronged you? I have. I've forgiven all kinds of people that have wronged me. I'm not going to go into it. I have other videos about forgiveness. But it will set you free. It will release that weight from your brain. You hold yourself down. You're holding yourself back in life. I know I was. It was hard for me to be successful in business, successful in relationships, and in other very important aspects of just my own personal development, having nothing to do with them, just my own personal development as a man on my own, because I was still wrapped in this crap from my childhood. Freud, Jung, and all the most famous psychologists, psychiatrists that you've ever read about, they all talk about this. You have to break free from your childhood. You have to forgive your family, forgive the sins of your father, forgive the weakness of your mother, forgive them all, and move on. And you use the struggle that you've gone through in your past in order to gain wisdom. You can walk a careful path along rocks and the edge of a cliff. It doesn't have to be so scary if you have the experience of knowing where to step. You get that experience through stumbling in the past. We've all stumbled. Even if it was inflicted upon us, you say, well, I was just such a perfect little child and I had nothing to do with it. That's how I felt. I was just being thrown around, being stretched like a rubber band, being put like a pinball in a pinball machine. I was this perfect little kid and I had nothing. I didn't ask for a criminal father who beat everybody and killed people. I didn't ask for abuse. I didn't ask for any of that. It doesn't matter. You went through it. And you have to be able to move on from it. Forgiveness will set you free. Every religion talks about this. You can fold your arms and hold your breath, but all you're going to do is hurt yourself. If you want to move on and be successful in life and be free from the bullshit that held you back, that's all in your head, you have to clear that path. You have to flush that toilet. We all flush the toilet. And that's shit that comes out of you. It's the worst that comes out of you. And you don't hold on to it. It's not making you powerful to keep that shit in that toilet. Anybody comes over to your house is going to be like, why don't you flush that? Get rid of it. And you say, well, that's a part of me. So what? Get rid of it. Move on. So, to grow up, to be fully adults, we have to burst the little bubble that we've created around our families, our parents, our mothers and fathers. Realize they weren't perfect. We have to forgive the sins of our parents and the abuse and the neglect. I went through all those things really badly. I had a really horrible, disturbing childhood. But I've forgiven my family for it. I've forgiven my father for his failures. He just was who he was. He was just only able to do what he was able to do. We can't choose who our parents were. That would be great. I would have chose different ones before I was even born, if I was sitting up with God and he's like, well, who do you want as a parent? Sure, I would have picked much different parents. But it doesn't matter where you start in the game. It doesn't matter where you start on the path. A team could be down 10 points going into the half. That doesn't mean the game's over. They can still come back and win. Good teams come back and win. So win the game. Allow yourself to win the game. And the way that you do this is by forgiveness, and growth, realizing what reality is. Look at yourself. Your parents were not that much different than you. You have flaws. You know it. You look in the mirror. That perfect parent that you had was just as flawed as you are. Now that should empower you instead of weaken you. This is all just stuff to think about. It's time to grow up. Thanks for watching.